Hey, how's everyone doing today? What we're going to do is we are going to take a look at low back pain and how to treat it. And I put together a little PowerPoint here so we can properly get through all the details. Now, I think it's extremely important to understand what low back pain is and how to deal with it, because the majority of us are going to probably experience it in some way or another in our lives, or you'll have someone around you that's going to experience it. And so you got to be prepared. You got to know what to do. You got to know what the background to this phenomenon is, and you'll be much better for it. Now, I want to preface all this by saying, if you have severe pain, don't use a video on the internet to treat your pain. You need to go to a specialist first. So what that means is go to someone who knows how to treat movement mechanic problems, because low back pain, generally speaking, is a result of movement mechanics and bodily positioning. So I recommend personally going to see a physiotherapist, because they have a pretty decent understanding of bodily mechanics. Now, if the pain's severe enough, go see a doctor as well. But generally speaking, and this isn't in all cases, but generally speaking, doctors are going to give you pain medication, and all that does is mask the pain. And we have to remember that doctors aren't all experts in every field of human anatomy and physiological structures. So you might not get the kind of assessment from a doctor that you would from a physiotherapist, for example. So these are just some things to keep in mind. You shouldn't be using, like I said, this video on its own to treat yourself. This is just general awareness so that you are prepared, okay? So having that aside, let's get into it. So the causes of back pain, low back pain, generally speaking, too much sitting. That's going to be the number one cause. Most of us are living very sedentary lifestyles and we're sitting a lot. And so that position is going to cause pain in your low back. Likewise, lack of activity. Being upright and moving around is much healthier for your back than lazing around. So if you have limited amount of physical activity in your day and you're sitting a lot, you are going to have low back pain develop. Poor posture, as well as poor movement mechanics. So if you aren't properly squatting down to pick up the objects, then you're eventually going to develop that pain, just the nature of the way the spine moves. Okay, so you need to be practicing standing upright and have the habit of always picking things up properly so that you don't cause pain and damage to your spine. Now, the symptoms. So how do you know what you have is low back pain? So sciatica, this pain or numbness, kind of like a dull ache that shoots down the leg, that's generally going to be a sign of low back pain, a back injury. Okay. If you have any weakness on that side, that's also going to be indicating limping. This is partly due to the nerve being damaged and compressed, so causing you to have less control over that side of your body, therefore not being able to move as effectively, any sort of difficulty bending over to pick things up, or from getting up from being down on the ground. So these are all signs that you're dealing with low back pain. Now, it's important to understand that this pain, this numbness that goes down your leg is not muscle pain in most cases. A lot of people start getting pain shooting down into their hips or into their glutes, and they go straight to stretching out the glutes or the hips. But you have to be aware that muscle pain is different than nerve pain, okay? And so pain that shoots down the leg is more likely going to be the nerve, and therefore you can't fix that by stretching. I've seen many cases where someone spends 3-4 months repeatedly trying to stretch out a hip, and it doesn't get better. And that's simply because you can't stretch out a compressed nerve. So then we'll talk about what the anatomy of that is next. So what's happening when you have low back pain, in vast majority of the cases, is that we get a disc bulge, usually at L4 or L5 in the spine. And this is the spot that takes the most stress in your body. So, and just to expand, L4 just means the area of the spine of the lumbar spine. Okay, so that's low. We can see in this image here, down low there, the vertebrae that surround the nerves and where they are released are usually going to be low in the back, where we receive the most compression. And we talked about sitting being one of the number one ways to develop this pain. Well, when you're sitting, you are compressing that specific area of your spine. And sitting without standing up repeatedly day after day, 8 hours at a time, that's going to wear on that area, on the spot between the two vertebrae, the disc, that jelly there between the two vertebrae, and the jelly is going to squeeze out. It's like almost like a donut, and that disc bulge is going to compress on the nerve where it exits the spine, and that compression is going to shoot down your leg. You're going to feel that nerve being compressed. So what that means is it's much similar to falling asleep on your arm, right? And then you feel like numbness in your arm. You lose the feeling of, because that nerve is compressed in your arm. Same thing's happening in your back, but you do this with sort of micro compression day after day. Now, this also can happen in larger movements being performed incorrectly too. So that's why we get sudden shocks of pain when we pick up a large object or slip or something, when we're holding something heavy, and then we see that again, disc bulge compressed right down onto that nerve, and boom, lots of pain. And so as this increases over time, we feel it travel further down the leg. Okay, so usually, at least from what I understand, in most cases, by the time you're feeling that nerve down in your foot, like that pain travels all the way down your leg into your foot, that's when you're getting close to surgery. Okay, your best case scenario is looking at addressing it when it's still contained just within your lower back. Okay, a lot of us start to feel it early on, pushing down in your glutes or into your hamstrings, depending on which nerve is actually being compressed. But if you're letting it travel further down towards the knee, that's when you're getting into dangerous territory. So you need to understand that pain is not a good sign, and it needs to be addressed at the originary point, okay? Where the nerve is being compressed, not where the pain is being felt. And this is a thing that a lot of people miss the boat on. They go straight to the where they feel the pain instead of going right to the source. Okay, so then we'll talk about trying to address the pain at the source. Okay, so there's a couple different ways we can unload the lower back, because that's the key here, is unloading the spot where the nerve is compressed, relieving the compression. And so the 4 ways to do this, these are all different ways that you can move your spine. So we have back bending, so that's like using the cobra or standing back bends, side gliding, so hips side to side, forward flexion can also be a way, so that's when we fold forward, it's the opposite of back bending. And then we have rotation, okay, and we can use lying lumbar rotation. So we'll go into some of that stuff later on. Now the key here is that these are all different areas, but not necessarily everyone is going to respond to every single one of these areas. Okay, so just because you can move in these different directions for your lower back, that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Okay, from what I understand, about 90% of the population is going to respond positively to back bending. That's the go-to way to treat back pain. About 10% of the population will respond to forward flexion. Okay, so forward flexion, probably that's sitting down and reaching forward or sitting in the child's pose, isn't necessarily going to work for everyone. But we need to have a variety of options, because not every single option is going to work in every single case. And even someone that might respond positively to back bending might not be able to get into those positions because the pain is too much. So you need to have alternatives, because the goal, the treatment, and this is rehab in general, is you do what you can to make the pain go away. Whatever makes it worse, you stop doing. Whatever makes it feel better, you do. And you want to try and avoid just sitting around doing nothing. Now, in some cases that you might have to just sit around and do nothing, but ideally the way the body works is you fix things by moving them in a way that feels good, that relieves the pain. Okay? The last area of treatment is to strengthen the core. And when we talk about strengthening the core, we don't mean the rectus abdominis, that superficial layer of the abdominals. We're talking about the transversus abdominis, or we'll call it the T-abs from here on out. And the goal is to be able to activate the T-abs so that we can secure the spine in place and help pull that disc bulge back in. So in this diagram here, we have an illustration of the T-abs, and we can see that they go all the way around to the low back. And with our T-abs, they act as like a seat belt, okay? They wrap the entire way around the body. So if we can activate them, not just in the front, but also in the back, everything gets pulled into place and stays nice and rigid. And this is the main area of your core that we refer to when we talk about core strength. Okay, it's not really the six-pack area that you see. It's this deeper area, and we often miss this. But this is crucial, whether or not you have back pain, just for any sort of movement in life, athletics, lifting, whatever. You need to be able to activate this to be much stronger, to keep your spine neutral and solid. Okay, because if you can't keep that transversus abdominis intact, then it's going to be weak and it's going to let those high stress areas of the spine start to receive compression and damage. Okay, and we want to be able to keep them active throughout daily activities, right? Not just in certain motions. Okay, so now we'll go through, just quickly overview each of these different types of treatments. Some examples of what you can be doing. So back bendings, number one way. Cobra is generally speaking going to be the best position to use. Right? If you can do a Cobra without making your back hurt, then this is what you should be going for. So you lie on the ground, hands about shoulder width apart. Now hand placement can be personal. So for a Cobra, sometimes it's right underneath your shoulders, sometimes there's hands will be further out in front. You have to adjust based on what feels good. Then you're going to push the torso up, right? And again, the degree to which you lift your body off the ground depends on what your flexibility is, as well as how much pain is being alleviated. So if you can go halfway up and that feels good, then you don't need to go the rest of the way up. And sometimes going the full extension through that Cobra is going to make that back pain come back. So you need to stay within the limits. Again, move where the pain fades away without making it worse. And then you also want to keep the glutes disengaged. So sometimes in yoga, they'll tell you to engage the glutes, but for treatment of lower back injuries, you want to keep the glutes disengaged. Okay, and this is just to help take any strain off the lower back. We want to release it as much as possible. We want to allow that area that's compressed to decompress, essentially. And we talked about that disc bulging out kind of like jelly. Well, when you decompress it, when you alleviate the area, it starts to suck back in. So that's why we need to do multiple repetitions. So you push up and then come all the way back down for 10 reps through these Cobras. And then you can add sets as needed. But again, it's about repetition to keep that disc sucked back in place. Okay, so it needs to be over a certain amount of time. Now, obviously you can't always lay down in a Cobra, so you need to have some alternatives. So then we have standing back bend, which is the same idea. Hands on your hips or hands in your low back, and you just arch your back and then come back down. It helps to think about lifting your chest to the ceiling, but again, don't overdo it if you cause more pain. And then come back down. Now you need to keep your hips steady, so you can position your hips against a desk, table, just so that you ensure you are not letting your hips lead the movement. Because the goal again is to arch the back and open up that space in the lower back so that the disc can get sucked back in. If we overdo it by letting our hips come forward, then we start to lose the decompression. Okay, and then same idea, 10 reps. It's good, whether or not you have back pain, just do stand up and do back bends every once in a while if you are sitting and working a lot. This is one of the number one ways to prevent back pain. Okay. Our next example is the side glide. So this is a very basic movement, and you keep your hips neutral. You just let your hip slide off to the side, like in the image here. You got to make sure you keep your shoulders square. Now we don't want to shift our whole body over as we slide our hips. The goal again is just to unload the spine, unload the pain where that nerve is getting pinched. And then you come back to the center. And we repeat going to the same side. Generally side gliding, the goal again is to unload the area that the nerve is being compressed. So when we have low back pain, generally one side is being compressed over the other, right? It's not both areas, both nerves going out to the left and right that are being compressed. It is one side receiving more of the load of that disc bulging out. So the side glide helps target that one side. Now different people respond differently. So sometimes you'll side glide to the side that nerve is being compressed on, the side that's painful. Sometimes you'll slide away, but this is dependent on the person. So it's important to know what actually feels all right. And if only one side feels good, then you just side glide to that same side. If it feels like it's unloading it and it's not getting worse, the pain's not increasing each rep, then that means that you are unloading it. And this is great for people that are in a position where they can't really do back bends or don't respond to other forms and just need a nice simple movement. You can do it within a doorway to help stabilize your shoulders so that it's just the hips moving. Okay, we need to isolate the hips so we can focus on deloading that area of the spine. Okay. Then we have forward folding. And like I said, this is about 10% of the population is going to respond positively to forward folding. Very simple stuff. You're sitting in your chair, you reach forward, allow the spine to curve, let gravity pull you down, and then you come back up. Okay, and again, this is just stretching, helping to pull apart that area that's being compressed in the spine, and then using that natural stretch to help unload it. Okay, child's pose is another option for this. Now, child's pose, you don't necessarily rep these out, you just rest in that position. You know, maybe you've been sitting for a long time and you need to relax the low back. You get down in your child's pose and then you'll be fine. Okay. Then our next one is rotation. So spinal rotation is another way to make that spine move, and we can respond pretty well to this. A simple line rotation is just where we line our back, leave your arms out to the side to stabilize, let your knees bend, and then you're going to rotate your knees, keeping them together side to side. And the extent that you rotate them again depends on the degree of pain that you feel and how much it alleviates the pain, as well as your own personal flexibility. So you can go the full distance back and forth. You can tuck your legs in closer, or you can tuck your legs in further away to change the length of the lever. It's all dependent on the person. And then at the bottom of the rep, you'll just want to pause for 5 to 10 seconds, let it release and stretch to one side, and then come back to the other side. Now, you might feel that one side is painful and the other side alleviates the pain. So then you just repeat to the same side over and over again. Okay? And again, that 10 rep range, that's the gold standard in rehabilitation. So we just do 10 per side and then add more sets if needed, or until you get that pain under control. Okay? So just another way to keep the spine mobile without damaging the area that the nerve is compressed more. Okay? Then we'll talk about core strengthening. So the goal is all ensuring that you can activate your T-abs more. So you start with just the basic T-ab activation. You lie flat in your belly. You pull the belly button to the spine. You can almost imagine like you're doing a Kegel, for example, right? You need to squeeze and hold it tight. You can keep your fingers on, just outside of the belly button. Okay, just about 2 centimeters above the hips, and about an inch away from the belly button, and that will let you know how tight you're able to squeeze those T-abs. Hold for 5 seconds at a time, and you have to make sure that you're breathing through, okay? Because we want this to be able to apply to your daily motion. So you don't want to be required to have to hold your breath every time you engage your T-abs in your day-to-day activities. So this is where you practice breathing through your core activation, okay? And then you release. Repeat until you get a solid grasp of that core activation. And then you scale this up. So again, if you're someone who actually is suffering from back pain, you want to start nice and simple. And then we can scale up as we go. Now you might be someone that's looking to just prevent that back pain or enhance your sports performance by being more solid in your core. So to scale it up, you might do heel slides or leg lifts. And those would be in that same position we see in this first diagram here, only now you're adding some motion. So a heel slide would be letting one leg slide out, full extension, and back in while keeping your abs engaged. Then release and then reset for the next leg. Then leg lifts would be a similar thing. You lift one leg at a time while keeping your T-abs activate. Then you activate your other side for the other leg lift, okay? And then the most advanced version of this we usually see is the bird dog. So this is where we're on one hand and one knee, opposite limbs are on the ground. You reach out to full extension while keeping your lower back nice and flat, okay? And you keep those T-abs engaged for the entire time. Okay, we hold that position at the end like we see in the diagram for 5 seconds, come back down, release the abs, and then reset. And the goal is to be able to eventually be doing 10 reps of bird dog, for example, without having to release your T-abs. Okay, so if you want to be very strong, active lifter, for example, right? You want your deadlifts to keep those cores, that T-ab engaged all the way through. The bird dog is a great way to just start to develop that. Okay. Just to finish off, we'll have a little discussion surrounding some of the ideas that come up and how to talk about why we have so much back pain. Okay, so the prevalence of these lower back injuries have increased greatly over the past year. Causes, what are they? Well, like was stated, sitting is one of the number one reasons that we get lower back pain. I think something close to 90% of people are getting some form of back pain, back injury. Okay, big issue for people to deal with these days because we sit around so much. Obviously, we've had this lockdown, this pandemic for the past 2 years, so that has caused more people to sit inside on their computers, and then the general structure of our lifestyles is very sedentary, and it's a cliche, but the objects that stay in motion stay in motion. Objects in motion stay in motion. Objects that are not in motion do stay at rest, right? And so that's what the habitat that we occupy. And if you want to prevent that from happening, so discussion point number 2, how do we prevent that from happening? Well, you just have to move more, and you have to build in habits where you stop compressing your spine so much. So that means get up for movement breaks more regularly. That means using back bends or forward folds or whatever makes your back feel nice and released. It also means emphasizing good structure, good patterns in your movements, okay? So that's as simple, even if you're reaching down to pick up a pen, it doesn't have to be a heavy object. You should still be practicing squatting down at the ground and using your legs to get down there as opposed to bending over with your back, because that low back really should not be taking the brunt of any load. It should always be secondary. It should always be unloaded, okay? We got to keep our core engaged, our spine neutral and solid so that we do not damage it unnecessarily. And it's even as simple as just having better posture while you're sitting. Okay, hunched over in your chair at your desk day to day, that is not going to result in anything positive for you. So it is always better to make sure that you're aware of what is causing damage to your spine and then do the things you need to do to reverse it. And I've outlined them here. So move more, sit less, and you will be in a lot better position for your low back. Because you got a long life to live. You don't want to spend it all suffering with low back pain. That is not the way to live. Okay, so that's everything I got for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed it and you found it insightful, found some good information, and I'll see you around.